welcome to the Proposers Conference for the NYCHA Access Solar Solicitation. My name is Ron Reisman, and I'm the New York City Solar Partnership Program Manager at Sustainable CUNY. Along with my Sustainable CUNY colleague, Lisa Purchase, we'd like to thank you for attending this morning's event and for your interest in Access Solar. The purpose of this Proposers Conference is really threefold. First, it provides an overview of NYCHA's sustainability agenda and offers a deeper dive into the solicitation. Second, it provides an opportunity for potential participants in the solicitation to submit questions to NYCHA. As our presenters will explain later, though, we will not be responding to your questions during this conference, but we'll post those responses in writing on the NYCHA website in the very near future. Third, we'd like to encourage the community-based organizations and the solar developers on this call to connect with each other for the purpose of forming teams that will submit proposals. The acronym Access Solar includes the words community empowerment, and that's a very important element of this program. Access Solar is not simply a procurement. It's an initiative that brings the community together with the solar industry for the purpose of improving the city's environment, encouraging economic investment in our neighborhoods, creating jobs, and providing clean, lower-cost electricity to LMI households. To that end, we'll be circulating a list of attendees to everyone on this call so they can contact each other offline to create these partnerships. But if for any reason you do not want your name shared with the rest of the group, please send me an email at nysolar@cuny.edu, and we'll take you off the list. Sustainable CUNY is proud to have been supporting Access Solar since its inception in 2018, and we look forward to continuing our support in the future. This morning, you'll be hearing from representatives from NYCHA, who I will introduce now. First is Catherine, or Katie Bergio, Deputy Director of Sustainability Programs in the Asset and Capital Management Sustainability Group. That's Katie there with the cherry blossoms in the background. Then we have Claudette Pichardo, Program Associate, also with the Asset and Capital Management Sustainability Group. Supervising this is Siobhan Watson, who is the Deputy Director of Sustainability Programs. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Katie and Claudette.
Thanks so much, Ron. And thanks everyone for attending. I will go over some housekeeping before we get into the content of today's webinar. Please keep yourself muted for the duration of the conference. As Ron said, we have a Q&A box in Zoom that you can submit questions to, and we won't be responding to the questions during this conference, but we will be publishing our responses on our Access Solar webpage on July 9th. And if there are any questions after the webinar, they can be submitted to accesssolar@nycha.nyc.gov by June 27th. That will also be responded to and published on the 9th. We will also provide a recording of this webinar, and the slide deck will be posted on Sustainable CUNY's New York Solar Map website after today's conference. And as Ron said, Sustainable CUNY will circulate a registration list to facilitate connections between the community organizations and developers. And if you'd like to opt out, please email newyorksolar@cuny.edu. All right, so in today's conference, we're going to go through NYCHA sustainability goals for some context. We'll give an overview of how the Access Solar program works and what the responsibilities of the project developer and NYCHA hold. And then we'll get into some specifics on the current solicitation. At the end, we'll recap some questions and answers from our first round of Q&A in the solicitation, and with some key reminders and next steps on the solicitation. So the New York City Housing Authority, or NYCHA, is the largest public housing authority in the country. We house 1 in 17 New Yorkers, and we maintain over 2,000 residential buildings. The authority's focus is to provide quality, sustainable housing for New Yorkers while fostering economic mobility. And We have a long history of sustainability in the authority. Even though our first agenda was released in 2016, we've had many programs over the decades that have evolved with the work that happens here at the authority. We have continued to evolve these programs through our sustainability agendas, our first one released in 2016 and our second in 2021, and as well with our other programmatic plans. The Access Solar program was created and launched in 2018, and it aligns with both the city's 80 by 50 roadmap and the sustainability agendas, both the first one in 2016 and the second one in 2021, reflecting the authority's long-term climate and equity commitments. Um, Specifically, the Access Solar program directly supports two goals from our 2021 sustainability agenda. The first is reducing greenhouse gas emissions from power generation, which supports the city's goals to reduce carbon emissions by 80% by 2050, and to increase the city's clean energy generation by improving grid resiliency. And the second is to expand access to green economy opportunities for NYCHA residents. The Access Solar program's goals are to host 30 megawatts of solar capacity by 2026, to generate lease revenue for building operations at NYCHA, to provide training and green jobs for NYCHA residents, to reduce energy costs for low and medium income New Yorkers, and to help build capacity for community-based organizations. The Access Solar and Sustainability Agenda goals are also supported by our Clean Energy Academy, which was launched in 2022 and has had more than 60 graduates so far. The Public Housing Community Fund, in close partnership with NYCHA, is currently leading the new cohorts, and there are 3 cohorts planned for this year, and we're really excited to support them with this new solicitation and providing them jobs. All right, so we'll give a quick overview of the Access Solar program. The Access Solar, which is accelerating community empowered shared solar, is a model for deploying community solar at scale on public housing without diverting public housing funds from other capital needs that NYCHA has. All of our projects are front of meter leases for community solar. And this new solicitation is for 2.9 megawatts in total and builds on our previous work, progressing towards our goal of 30 megawatts by 2026. And just for a refresher, community solar is used at NYCHA since our electricity is provided by the New York Power Authority at low rates, which makes the power purchase agreements most economical for us. NYCHA, the building owner, serves as the host site and puts out Access Solar solicitations to source project developer teams that build, own, operate, and manage the solar system, or in this diagram would be the PV system owner. Other New Yorkers can subscribe to the Community Solar Program and subsidize their utility bills with the priority of supporting LMI New Yorkers in this program. Claudette is going to get into some responsibilities that both of the project developer teams and NYCHA have in the Access Solar program.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Katie. And just quickly want to say thank you for taking the time to be here if you are participating in this conference. So we're just going to get into some of the details of how these projects work and what the project developer responsibilities are. So, just to start off on the project financing and system ownership, the project developer is responsible for identifying and securing project financing. NYCHA cannot cover any costs or provide any financial security for these projects unless these are also responsible for owning and maintaining and operating these systems, along with the responsibility to design and construct them. All of the roofs under the solicitation are under warranty, so the project developer will need to coordinate with the roofing manufacturer to ensure that the roof warranties are not voided. Oh, sorry, next slide. Some other project developer responsibilities. So teams should, for O&M and safety and security, teams should review Exhibit C, which are our minimum technical specifications, and Exhibit F, the safety and security table, to develop safety procedures that specifically address preventing risks to NYCHA staff and residents during and after construction. Lease payments, all Access Solar projects must include a lease payment. We'll talk about this a little bit more later on in the conference, and some like lease structure requirements. And then also the project developer is expected to reserve a minimum of 50% of the power for low moderate income subscribers and offer at least a 10% bill credit. Teams can also review attachment A, which is the consumer protection terms. Sorry, next slide. And then some other project developer responsibilities. So an integral part of these projects is training and hiring for NYCHA residents. Although there is not a specific number of hires that NYCHA requires, it is a standard that 25% of labor hours on construction projects are to be worked by NYCHA residents. Teams should also work with NYCHA's Resident Economic Empowerment and Sustainability Department. REIS's role in these projects is typically to verify NYCHA resident hires, but they also track hiring and training goals and can support with like some levels of outreach and connect teams to residents who may already be qualified if they've participated in other training programs. One example being the Clean Energy Academy, which Katie mentioned before. And we also expect the project developer to, connect with the Public Housing Community Fund to provide hiring opportunities to graduates of the program. And now that we've gone through all the project developer responsibilities, I want to run through some of NYCHA's responsibilities. So the first thing is obviously NYCHA will be a host site for these installations, and we will be responsible for providing teams access to the sites, reviewing plans, designs, and safety procedures to ensure in compliance with our requirements. Some of these requirements include not disrupting ongoing operations at our sites. We have maintenance staff that need access to certain areas of the roof, so we need to ensure that there are clear paths to those areas along with identifying any potential hazards. And we also support with REIS coordination and connecting teams to resident leaders at each site.
Great. So now we're going to get into some specifics of the solicitation. Our 2025 solicitation is structured in 2 bundles, one with 5 developments in the Bronx and the other with 3 developments in Brooklyn. Project teams may submit proposals for one or multiple bundles, but each proposal must stand on its own. NYCHA has previously made awards for multiple bundles to one project team, and we may do so again in this solicitation. During the solicitation period, we are offering site visits to each of the properties. They start on the 16th and run through the 24th. Attendance is not required for teams to submit proposals, but we do highly recommend site visits. If you're interested in attending, please RSVP to the accessolar@nycha.nyc.gov email at least 24 hours before the scheduled site visit. Each site visit will include going up to 1 or 2 representative rooftops and meter rooms, and the teams will be accompanied by NYCHA staff. Proposers can also request additional site visits by emailing the ACCESSolar NYCHA email by June 24th at 5 p.m. Also during the solicitation, we have 2 rounds of questions and answers. The first round has been completed and answers were posted and are available on the ACCESSolar webpage. The deadline for submitting additional questions for round 2 is June 27th, which is after site visits are being completed, and answers will be posted on the same webpage on July 9th. In a timeline view, this is what our 2025 solicitation looks like. Deadlines for questions and submissions are called out here, so make sure you refer to this slide, take screenshots, we'll have it posted. Our proposals for one or multiple bundles are due by 5 p.m. on July 31st. NYCHA anticipates selecting teams for award by the end of September this year. And we will get into some specific proposal requirements.
Thanks, Katie. So yeah, just to run through some of the solicitation content and proposal requirements. The first thing is that the proposing entity must be registered on Passport, which is the city's procurement platform. The proposer should provide proof that they're registered with their proposal, which can just be like in the form of an image attached to the proposal. And we will not consider the proposal if the proposing entity is not registered. This will help expedite lease execution. So now just to get into the proposal sections, the first thing is all proposals should include a cover page with the proposing team's info and all of the quantitative requirements listed out. So this would be like lease amount, LMI subscriptions, and resident hiring commitments. Section 1 is team information, which includes more detail on the proposing team, includes org charts, resumes, and proof of the proposer's legal existence. The proposer should also include financial statements, which can be substituted for attachment C, our financial qualification statement form. And section 2, proposers should run through the technical approach and construction plan. This is where teams can discuss plans to protect NYCHA buildings, staff, and roof warranties. We also request a draft Gantt chart, which includes project milestones, including interconnections, DOB approvals, construction. And this section is where teams could also submit their attachment E, the site proposal form. So this is just what attachment E looks like. You can see lease payments are broken down by building, and it also outlines system sizing per building. Also, just a reminder that all attachments should be requested to NYCHA's ACCESSolar email. Other submission requirements include an operation, maintenance, and security plan. This should also detail decommissioning at the end of the lease. Section 4 should run through the financing plan for the project. Additional submittals include documentation and commitment letters that reference the specific sites and funding. Delivering financial benefits to NYCHA and NYCHA residents would be a short narrative that includes attachment E as well, and potentially a pro forma justifying the proposed lease amount. Teams should also use this section to identify other creative benefits to NYCHA residents outside of the training and hiring opportunities, which we also score for, which Katie will talk about in a couple of slides. Section 6 should detail plans to hire NYCHA residents. This section can also outline the team's plan to coordinate with the Public Housing Community Fund to connect with NYCHA Clean Energy Academy graduates. And then the last couple of sections of the proposal content include section 7, the proposer's LMI enrollment commitments, along with outreach strategies to subscribe LMI customers. Section 8, which is the lease agreement comments. Teams should provide high-level red lines or responses to the lease template, which is attachment F. This will help speed the process of getting leases signed if we have those comments prior to or once proposals are submitted. And then last but not least are any exceptions that the proposer has to the requirements. So this section can be used to outline any exceptions. It is optional. You can also submit additional deliverables that proposers believe will help NYCHA evaluate their proposals better. So one example could be letters of support. Next slide.
All right, we're going to talk about how we are evaluating each proposal. So our evaluation is focused in 3 areas: the team's qualification, financials, and technical approach, which includes a review of provided finances, the qualification of the team's members with a focus on MWBE participation, and design approaches that are submitted, how the team will minimize risk for NYCHA staff and residents during construction, and just a keynote to make sure that the team is familiar with NYCHA's requirements that are included as an attachment to the solicitation and will be reviewed with submissions. Our second evaluation section is the benefits to NYCHA and NYCHA residents. So this would include lease payment amounts, hiring commitments, LMI enrollment plans and commitments, and any other benefits that the project team can make available to NYCHA residents. And then the third category is proposer exceptions to the lease or proposal requirements. As Claudette said, the teams must note any exceptions to the proposal requirements or lease terms in sections 9 and 8, respectively, of their response. And scores will be reduced if there are excessive exceptions to either the lease template or the proposal requirements. So we want to make sure we have all of that in advance and minimize the negotiation time after award. During the evaluation of proposals, we may request interviews, presentations, or other correspondence from the proposing teams. If there are interviews, they will be scheduled between August 11th and 20th. If that doesn't work for teams, we will have further communication on that, but trying to keep this expedited. NYCHA may also request best and final offers from the proposers, and that will inform our final evaluation. Proposals will be ranked based on the evaluation criterion that was laid out, and NYCHA may award up to 2 separate teams to develop community solar at the selected sites. after the notice of award, NYCHA will work with awarded teams to execute a lease agreement within 6 months. That is based on averages in the past, but we will really work to shorten this time frame as much as possible, given the potential changes with federal incentives. Awarded teams will enter into a site license agreement to conduct additional site surveys and begin pre-development work that may inform lease negotiations prior to execution. Also, we will have to have an approved VNC for the intended lessee prior to lease execution, as well as a submitted insurance documentation. And that is why we're requiring passport registration at proposal submission. And then just to note that the narrative sections of the proposal will be included as attachments to the lease. So that is it for the 2025 solicitation. Claudette is going to go over some Q&A from the first round that we had, just to recap some questions that we thought were worth highlighting in this conference.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, we may have answered some of these already, but we can run through them pretty quickly. So the first question is just how will the lease payments to NYCHA be structured, fixed, variable, based on production, or escalating over time? So as I mentioned previously, as shown in attachment E, the lease payments are building by building and should be calculated on a dollar per kilowatt basis. But whether they're fixed or escalating structures, those are determined by the proposer, and teams should take a look at section 3.3.5 of the solicitation to understand lease structures and lease payment commitments to NYCHA. The next one is what the role of community-based organizations is in these projects. So obviously community empowered is part of the ACCESSolar name, and it's an important aspect of the project. CBOs bring different expertise in public policy issues, environmental justice, and tend to work directly in the communities that are that the sites are in. We've typically seen CBOs mostly involved in training, hiring, and outreach for subscribers, and then also leading like other creative benefits. So some of those are like educational programs or community funds that we've seen community-based organizations take the lead on in these projects. And then the other is, we went through this one, what are the minimum requirements for NYCHA resident hiring in terms of positions or percentage of workers? So again, there isn't a standard minimum number of resident hires, but it is a programmatic requirement that 25% of labor hours be completed by verified NYCHA residents. Next slide. And then just a couple more questions. So will NYCHA provide structural assessments of the rooftops, or is this a responsibility of the proposing team? So structural assessments are the responsibility of the proposing team, but NYCHA can provide building information like historical plans or warranties that will support teams in these assessments. I'll also note that all of the roofs under the solicitation have been replaced within the last 10 years and are under warranty. NYCHA developments are also generally expected to handle solar installation loads. The next question is about interconnection requirements and if NYCHA has a role in this. So NYCHA doesn't facilitate the interconnection process with Con Ed. This is also the responsibility of the project developer. However, NYCHA can provide teams with any information they need to aid in submitting these applications. And then the final question is, what financial information will teams need to submit to demonstrate project viability? So I recommend that teams take a look at section 3.3.4 of the solicitation, but we ask that teams provide evidence that project financing is secured or will be secured upon lease execution. This should reference the specific sites and project amount of funding provided from financial partners, and whether that be like letters of commitment or other forms of evidence. And I think that's the last question that we had to run over.
Thanks, Claudette. All right, just some reminders as we've reached the end of our presentation for the conference today. Reminder, register for site visits by emailing accesssolar@nycha.nyc.gov. You have to email by June 15th, which is a Sunday, so ideally by Friday, in order for us to send you invitations and details on timing for those site visits. You can also request additional site visits by June 24th at 5 p.m. Any Q&A in the chat will be responded to by July 9th, but if there are additional questions after the webinar, they can be submitted to ACCESSolar email by June 27th, and then we'll have everything published on July 9th. Proposals are due by 5 p.m. on July 31st, and a recording of the webinar and slide deck will be posted on the Sustainable CUNY's New York Solar Map website after our session today. And that is it from us. Ron, any final remarks?
Yeah, well, thank you, Claudette and Katie, for a very informative presentation. What we'll be doing is we'll be sending an email to not only everyone who is attending this webinar, but everyone who registered for it, because we recognize that things come up and sometimes you register and you just can't attend. But we'll be sending you an email with a link to the recording on our website, and we will also be sending out a list of the attendees. So again, there can be connections made between the solar developers and the community-based organizations. If you do not want to be on that list, if you do not want and it's no personal information, just basically the name, the organization, and the email. But if you don't want that, that's fine. And just send me an email at nysolar@cuny.edu and we'll remove your name from that list. This will be done over the next couple of days. I'd like to get this out by the end of the week. So if you do decide to do that, please try to send me something later today or tomorrow. I'd like to again thank our presenters and all the people that you don't see behind the scenes who are working on this. And we look forward to your participation in the solicitation. So thanks again and have a great day.